The inner workings of the NBA salary cap is a mystery to many casual fans. For example, this offseason you saw the Lakers sign a bunch of guys to decent-sized contracts despite the fact they were over the salary cap. Also every offseason, the rookie extensions and max contracts get bigger and bigger. LaMelo, Anthony Edwards, and Tyrese Haliburton just signed contracts that could be worth up to $260 million over 5 years, depending on all NBA team selections. So the question has to be asked. How do the max contracts continue increasing in value exponentially, and how are NBA franchises continuing to afford these deals? I originally finished the script literally the day before the NBA passed the 2023 CBA, so it took several more hours to complete the script after the fact. Anyways, if you've ever wondered about the salary cap and all the confusing lingo surrounding it, strap in because we're going to break it all down right now. The story of the NBA salary cap starts with the 1983 season. In the 1983 CBA, the NBA and its players agreed to impose a salary cap for each franchise to promote parity throughout the NBA. Technically, there was a salary cap for one season in the 1940s, but I'm not going to talk about this era of basketball. The following season, the salary cap began at $3.6 million. Magic Johnson was the league's highest paid player at the time, earning $2.5 million. That equates to almost 70% of the Lakers' salary cap. Obviously, this is a drop in the bucket compared to current day salaries, though. By the 97-98 season, the salary cap increased to $26.9 million, and the highest paid player was Michael Jordan, who was earning $33 million. If you're an astute mathematician like myself, you realize that number's higher than $26.9 million. 123% of the Chicago Bulls salary cap was being given to Michael Jordan. Obviously, something like this doesn't happen in today's NBA. Even going back to the 2015-16 season, just 8 years ago, the salary cap was only $70 million, and real air quotes over only $70 million. But then the cap jumped to $94 million in the 2016 offseason, increasing exponentially. But why did the cap get so much larger? Well, the NBA reached new national TV deals with ESPN and Turner Sports, which caused a huge increase in the revenues of the NBA, which in turn impacted the salary cap. Cap smoothing alternatives were proposed, but the NBA Players Association declined them because they obviously wanted to make more money. The NBA had no choice, and the cap exploded. A slightly odd rule in the CBA is that teams are required to spend 90% of the salary cap every year to ensure players are fairly compensated. You're never going to see a team like the Oakland Athletics in the NBA where they spend a fraction compared to other teams. If a team tries to go under this amount, the team has to pay the difference to the players anyway. So going into the 2016 offseason, every team had an egregious amount of cap space they had to spend. This is what caused, in no small part, all those terrible contracts to role players in that offseason. Think about it. Chandler Parsons got 4 years, $95 million. Timofey Mozgov, 4 years, $64 million. Luol Deng, 4 years, $72. Joakim Noah, 4 years, $72. Evan Turner got a 4-year, $75 million contract. Almost $20 million a year for Evan Turner. And the list goes on and on. The amount of bad NBA players that got these huge contracts that offseason is unbelievable. And obviously I use the word bad in comparison to other NBA players because even the worst NBA player would beat me 21-0. This huge salary cap increase had many other repercussions to it as well, though. It allowed the Warriors to retain their core players in the 2016 offseason. And oh yeah, sign Kevin frickin' Durant. 2016 changed the financial game in the NBA, and things aren't slowing down. In the present day, the salary cap continues to undergo exponential increases. To prevent a repeat of 2016, the CBA now states the salary cap can only increase up to 10% every year. In the 2022-23 season, the salary cap was $123.655 million. And for the 2023-24 season that's upcoming, it increased the maximum of 10% up to $136 million. So that explains how the salary cap got up to $136 million for the upcoming season. But how does it work? And how are teams able to technically spend money far above this threshold every year? The answer lies in the fact that the NBA has a soft cap, which is further defined by something called the luxury tax threshold. Teams can and do spend over the cap using bird rights, contract exceptions, and more. You may be asking, but what's a luxury tax? What are bird rights? You just introduced two key terms here, both of which are very confusing, to which I say, calm down, dummy, I'm getting there. Let's start with the luxury tax threshold and the luxury tax aprons. For the upcoming season, the luxury tax threshold is $162 million. The luxury tax is meant to just be a deterrent to owners to rampantly spend a bunch of money. Depending on how much a team exceeds the luxury tax threshold by, they have to pay an increasing amount per dollar over the threshold. Owners are generally wary to go above this threshold unless they truly believe they can compete for a title. There's a good portion of the league above the luxury tax, but only a select few teams supersede it by more than a few $1,000,000. The 2023 CBA further complicated the luxury tax as it introduced the two luxury tax aprons. The first is $7 million over the luxury tax, or about $172 million for the upcoming season, and the second is $17.5 million above the luxury tax, or about $182.5 million for the upcoming season. If a team is over the first luxury tax apron, they still have some level of roster flexibility and have to pay some luxury taxes. A team can use the exceptions I will mention later, specifically the taxpayer mid-level exception and biannual exception, but if they use that, they will then be hard capped. The huge inconveniences arise when a team supersedes the second luxury tax apron. A team over this threshold has basically zero flexibility. They are disallowed from using any mid-level exception, taking on any additional money from trades, and even signing players on the buyout market. Essentially, they are limited to signing minimum players to fill out their roster. This is a move to promote further parity in the NBA. Teams will have to be more creative in constructing their roster, as perennial championship contenders can't just continue to throw money to keep the team intact. You've probably heard about this second luxury tax apron in the aftermath of the Bradley Beal trade to the Phoenix Suns. The upcoming season, the Phoenix Suns owe 163 million buckaroos to Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Ayton. They knew they would supersede the second apron with this. They could only sign guys to really small contracts this offseason, but they still made out with a decent free agency class of Eric Gordon, Gata Bates-Diop, Chimezie Metu, Drew Eubanks, and some more good players. With this being recorded on July 11th, it seems like the Phoenix Suns are mostly done making moves. Their team salary is up to about $191 million, and that's going to be an estimated $66 million luxury tax bill. But that's not even the most in the NBA. The Golden State Warriors have a team payroll of a close to $206 million after acquiring Chris Paul in a trade and re-signing Draymond Green, and that equates to an estimated luxury tax bill of $181 million, and that's in addition to the team payroll they already have to pay. Now that we've talked about the luxury tax, we can take a little bit of a step back and discuss the concept of bird rights, which, yes, are named after Larry Bird. He was the first player to have this concept enacted upon him. A player gains bird rights when they have played for an organization for at least 3 years on any combination of contracts. This allows a team to re-sign a player to an extension despite being over the salary cap. It should also be noted that a player's bird rights are able to be traded with them. That's how Kyrie Irving signed his large extension with the Mavericks this offseason, despite them being over the salary cap. Teams retain a player's bird rights using cap holds. When a player becomes a free agent, their money is still held against a team's cap sheet. This makes it so teams can't just sign a bunch of players till they hit the cap, and then re-sign all their bird rights guys. The amount of a cap hold depends on the size of their previous contract and the years of service in the NBA for that player. Let's start out with the rookie scale players. For those in their second or third year of the contract, the cap hold is simply the maximum allowed amount under the bird exception. It gets a little more complicated for the fourth year or final year of a first-round rookie contract. If the player's previous salary was at or above the league average, their cap hold is 250% of their previous year's salary. If it was below the league average salary, it's a whopping 300% of their previous year's salary. I don't know how or why the CBA decided all this stuff, but I guess that's why I'm not a part of the negotiations. Being 22 years old doesn't help either, probably. For players not on their rookie scale contracts but with bird rights, there are different brackets. If you're at or below the league average salary, the cap hold is 190% of the previous year. And if they're above the average salary, the cap hold is 150% of the previous year. Finally, those who don't have bird rights with any team have their cap hold being 120% of their previous year's salary. This is all important because if you want to retain the rights of these players, you have to keep their cap holds, hence it puts a large damper on a team's available cap space going into the offseason. Besides bird and non-bird right players, there's another important distinction to make between free agents: restricted and unrestricted. A restricted free agent is usually a first-round draft pick who had his fourth-year option picked up and is now finishing his rookie-scale contract. This allows his original team to match any offer sheet he receives via a process called right of first refusal. The other type of free agents are called unrestricted free agents. They're allowed to sign with any team that they want after the moratorium period of free agency is over. However, there are a lot of perks to remaining with your current team. Usually, the original team can offer more money as a result of being able to use bird rights to exceed the salary cap. Additionally, a player is only eligible to sign a Supermax extension with the team that they ended their rookie contract on. Over the last few years, you've probably heard that term a lot, the Supermax contract. You heard it when Curry signed the first massive one in 2017, and when Giannis hadn't re-signed with the Bucks yet in 2021, people thought maybe he would leave the Bucks. The contract, colloquially called the Supermax, is officially known as the Designated Veteran Player Exception. If a player meets the necessary requirements, which we'll talk about soon, they can earn up to 35% of the salary cap in the year they sign, with an 8% increase per year because of the bird rights. That's another concept I guess I should mention really quick. When you have bird rights, you can get up to an 8% increase in salary every year, when if you're not a bird right player, you can only get a maximum of 5% increases in salary every single year. To qualify for the Supermax, a player must be in their 8th or 9th season with the same team that they ended their rookie contract with. On top of that, they must have either made an All-NBA team in the previous season or 2 of the previous 3, been the MVP in the last 3 seasons, or been the Defensive Player of the Year in the previous season or 2 of the previous 3 seasons. If a player finishes a Supermax contract and is still meeting the requirements, they can sign another one if they stay with their same team. For all other players that are in their 8th or 9th season and beyond but haven't met the criteria for a Supermax contract, they can sign a maximum contract that is worth up to 30% of the salary cap in the first season. The last extension to note is the Designated Rookie Extension. This allows any players coming off their rookie deal to sign a 5-year extension that can be worth up to 25% of the salary cap in the year signed. Players who have recently signed this deal are like Michael Porter Jr., Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, De'Aaron Fox, Ben Simmons, and many more. A team can only have up to 2 of these players on their team concurrently, so for example, the Denver Nuggets have the maximum number because of Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, and teams can only trade for one of these players. That's why the Nets were quite limited during the Kevin Durant saga. They had Ben Simmons, a designated rookie, on their team, so they couldn't trade for Bam Adebayo, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., all guys who were on this designated rookie extension. For any other type of contract extension that isn't one of these maximum 25, 30, or 35% of the salary caps, the maximum first-year salary is an 140% increase from their previous deal, and this was changed from 120% in previous CBAs. So way back when, 7 minutes ago in this video at this point, I said that there are a few other exceptions a team can use to exceed the salary cap. So let's talk about those now. The first one is very simple: minimum contracts. Even if signing a minimum contract would put you over the salary cap, a team is still able to sign a player to a 1 or 2 year minimum deal. This makes sense as every team needs to fulfill the active roster requirements. Next are rookie contracts. No matter your salary cap situation, a team can always sign the rookies they select in the draft. Let's take Jonathan Kuminga and the Golden State Warriors, for example. When he was drafted in 2021, the Warriors were more than $60 million over the salary cap. Yet, they could still take on his $5.47 million first-year salary. Then come the more complex contract exceptions. You've probably heard the terms mid-level exception and biannual exception thrown around every offseason, but what exactly do they mean? Starting with the mid-level exception, or MLE, there are 3 different types of it. You can only use one of them a single time every offseason, but it can be split amongst several different players. The first one is called the cap room mid-level exception, which is fairly explanatory. It's used by teams that are under the salary cap level at the time. In the upcoming season, it's about $7.72 million and can be used to sign free agents for a maximum of 2 years. The second one is the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which can be used by teams above the salary cap but under the luxury tax. This upcoming season, the exception allows for a team to sign a player to a maximum of 4 years and a maximum of $12.405 million per year. For example, this is what the Knicks used to sign Dante DiVincenzo this offseason. The final one is the taxpayer mid-level exception, which can be used by teams above the first luxury tax apron, but under the second one. This upcoming season, the exception allows for a maximum of 3 years at $5 million per year. As I've mentioned, the NBA mainly uses a soft cap. However, there are still technically ways for a team to get hard capped in the NBA. One of the ways a team can get hard capped is through the use of the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. After using this, that team cannot supersede the luxury tax threshold. The second way to get hard capped is using the biannual exception. As the name implies, you can use this exception once every 2 years. In the upcoming season, this exception is $4.516 million and can be used for a maximum for a 2-year contract. As I said, the use of this exception also causes a hard capping at the luxury tax threshold. The final way to get hard capped is through a sign and trade. In the offseason, if a team does not have the salary cap space to sign a player outright, they can do a sign and trade. One recent example of this is the D'Angelo Russell for Kevin Durant deal that got Kevin Durant to Brooklyn. It should be noted that teams above the luxury tax threshold, or teams who have already used the mid-level exception in that offseason, cannot engage in a sign and trade. While I'm not sure it technically qualifies as salary cap information, the trades themselves have rules they need to adhere to in order to be salary cap legal. For tax-paying teams, the amount of money they can take in from a trade is 125% of the outgoing salary, plus $100,000. Don't know why they felt the need to add that $100,000, but okay. Non-tax-paying teams have a little more flexibility in trades, as you can see here. Depending on the amount of outgoing salary, they are allowed to take in different levels of incoming salaries. One last thing to note, if a team trades away more salary than they got in return, they're credited with the excess money, which they can use in future trades. That credit is called a trade exception, and it's equal to the difference in incoming and outgoing salary, plus $100,000, and it's valid for 1 year from the date of the trade. All in all, the NBA soft cap or salary cap, the luxury tax, and all the associated nuances are aimed to regulate player contracts, ensure parity in the NBA, while trying to maintain homegrown talent for all teams. But boy oh boy is it unintuitive and confusing as crap. So yeah, I'm done overloading you with information. By watching this video, you probably know more than like 75 of NBA owners now. I hope that some of you can use this knowledge in the future and it's not just a bunch of random information you heard. Thank you so much for watching this video. As we begin producing content on this channel, it's much appreciated. Like the video and let us know in the comments if there's any other video ideas you want to see. That's going to be it for now though. Until next time.